नमस्ते। मैं हूं गौरव त्रिपाठी। मैं और मेरी टीम लेकर आए हैं एक नई पॉडकास्ट सीरीज़ कोड केओस क्लैरिटी। ये सीरीज़ है जीपीयूज़, एआई और रिलेटेड टेक्नोलॉजीज़ के बारे में, उनके इम्पैक्ट, अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ और चैलेंजेस के बारे में। तो यदि आपका इंटरेस्ट है लेटेस्ट टेक, इनोवेशन, प्रोडक्ट्स और चैलेंजेस के अराउंड, तो प्लीज़ सब्सक्राइब करना ना भूलें हमारे चैनल को। ये सीरीज़ हम स्पॉटिफाई पर भी लेके आ रहे हैं, तो प्लीज़ वहाँ भी हमें फॉलो करें। योर सपोर्ट मीन्स द वर्ल्ड फॉर अस, so please like, share and subscribe. Thank you.
Kind of the current generation to know about how it all started and what was it like a few decades back. Where was India? Where was the whole tech scene? And how we are reached here and what lies ahead. So that's the idea. Okay. Let's then go back to the 90s. What was going through your mind when you decided to leave, stable job with US to start something in India? I mean, that was a time when I think there was a saying like IITians have one leg in India and other leg in Air India. So what prompted you to come back?
So honestly, the reason I came back was my parents. So as they were, I didn't want to leave them. I wanted to come back to them, and that was the main reason to come back. But what accelerated my coming back to India was India announcing the launching of commercial internet services in the year 1995. So I was in the US from 89 to 95. I did my master's at Columbia University. And I had the opportunity to work for the NSFNet backbone, which is the first large backbone of the internet. And the day that India announced that they would offer commercial internet services, although at that time it was still the monopoly of BSNL, yeah. I decided to come back. But I knew that now I could leverage some of the skills that I had back in India. So I was just looking for an opportune moment to come back, and that was the perfect time.
And for Netmagic, what was the elevator pitch like? It's like if you had to, what they typically say, if you met somebody in the elevator, or if you had to sell it to your friend at a coffee shop, what was it like? Because there was a very different time.
Absolutely. So I'll give you a little bit of context, and then I'll give you the elevator pitch. So when I came back to India in 95, it took so I was doing consulting for some large enterprises and also for BSNL themselves, because I had experience in building and scaling large networks, having worked in the NSFNet before. In 98, the government announced that they'd offer, from 95 to 98, it was only BSNL that could provide commercial internet services. In 98, the government announced that they would allow private players to offer internet services. So initially we started, till we raised capital, we were consulting to all the major private players that set up, including Satyam Infoway, which is now SIFI and others. Right. And, what we noticed was that everybody was focused on consumer internet. The valuations were dependent on number of eyeballs. Yeah. There were a number of subscribers. And nobody was looking at internet for mission critical business. How internet can play a role in mission critical business. And that was a simple business plan that we came up with. And I got exposure to data centers in the US. I was fortunate to meet the founders of Exodus Communications, Mr. B.V. Jagdeesh and K.V. Chandrasekhar in the US. And, I decided that this would be the opportunity moment. This is a white space that doesn't, nobody's focusing on business internet. They're all focusing on consumer internet. And that's a simple business plan that we wrote, saying that, this is what we would like to do in India. And that's how it ended up. So my elevator pitch was as simple as, we want to do, where IT is mission critical. Where it is mission critical, or why IT is mission critical, was a simple elevator pitch, saying that, we want to basically leverage internet for mission critical business. And we had a series of offerings, which included data centers and managed services. Cloud came later, yeah. But basically that.
We will come to cloud, yeah. But so who is the odd one out?
In some sense, yes, because when we started, people thought, how would, this is a capital intensive business. And people said, how is a startup going to, build data centers? And a little later in the journey, when the big boys like Reliance and Airtel and others, Tatas and everybody came in, they said, how are you going to compete with these players? So we were kind of the odd one out.
Talking about the data centers, as you said, it was a time when government had just announced and things were like just opening up. But what did you tell customers? Like, why did they need data centers? You spoke about businesses and mission critical, but how did you manage to convince them that data center was needed in fact at all?
So that's a great question. It actually took some time. Initially, there were a lot of skeptics. People wanted to be close to the data. They didn't want to outsource their mission servers. They wanted to build it in their own on-prem. We gave examples of how it was already happening in the West. We also we told clients that, look, they should focus on their core competence and leave the infrastructure outsourcing to experts. When we started, I think the only production grade data center was there in one or two banks. What Videsh Sanchar Nigam had in Prabhadevi at that time was, now of course after Tatas have taken over, they built state-of-the-art data centers. But at that time in Prabhadevi, they had data centers that didn't have UPS. So customers are adding in their own UPSs. They had windows open and pigeons would fly into the data center and disrupt the cabling, right? So and then a couple of unfortunate events which were fortunate for us happened, right? So for example, there was an earthquake in Bhuj in 2006. There was floods in Bombay. I think it was 2005. Total floods, and a lot of these on-prem data centers shut down. A lot of these data centers that didn't have state-of-the-art equipment with enough redundancy and resiliency shut down, and that actually ended up increasing the demand for data centers. So it took some time.
So I can imagine a conversation doing somewhere that somebody would have asked, no, I want here in my office. Mere bagal mein chahiye.
Absolutely. Most people were saying, why do I need to come to you? I built it. Here's my server room. I've already built my own data center. And, people said, what about security? What about, they were concerned. And similar things happen when we talk about cloud later. It was also when we moved to cloud, similar concerns. But I think over a period of time, people realized that, they were better off focusing on the core competence, focusing on the application side and leave the infrastructure to infrastructure experts. And there's a trend now that's worldwide. So now almost all the major banks, which are the most, where data is most mission critical and most sensitive, are almost all using third-party data.
When was the first time when you saw a computer?
I was actually fortunate. I was after I finished my 10th grade. So till the 10th, I not actually worked on my computer, right? In the 11th, one of my uncles, Mr. Naresh Agarwal, he started a company called Applied Electromagnetics in Delhi, in Noida, and he built one of the first indigenous computers in India with Indian languages support. He had, and I in my 11th, I did an internship with him, and that's when I first had access to computers. And then, of course, I properly used computers in IIT. There also, we had to timeshare. We didn't have personal computers then. The first personal computer I used was actually in Columbia University, where I used a Mac for the first time.
Wow!
Right, that was in '89. Yeah, so that was in first year in my masters. But we had access to computers, of course, in IIT. So that would have been between '85 and '89. So I think 84 was the first time. 1984 was the first time I used a computer.
I was 1 year old at that time. Okay, going back further, but then you saw computers so early on and everything. But as a child, how like you did you have it? You had your ambition. You wanted to be in tech, or how did that come?
Actually, I credit my father for that. What happened was in the 10th, I wasn't sure after 10th whether to go into science or commerce. Right, I had no idea what to do. I was like lost. My father gave me a simple piece of advice. He said that, look, if you go to if you take science and you don't like it, you can always go back to commerce. But if you take commerce, you can't. It's going to be very difficult to move to commerce.
Very interesting.
So that simple piece of advice is what ended up making me go towards the STEM side, and then the rest was history.
But how did IIT happen? Was it like one from the parent side or
so? My uncle, Mr. Naresh Agarwal, who's my father's sister's husband, he was like a top ranker from IIT Delhi, and he inspired me to go for IIT entrance. So 11th and 12th, I hardly went to college. I only studied for IIT entrance, and fortunately got in to IIT Bombay, and that's how I ended up IIT. So once I decided to go with STEM, I didn't like bio as much. Yeah, unlike you. For me, I was not very good at bio. Now, and I appreciate and I feel I missed something. And I'm really very interested in learning about the latest in drug discovery, etc., the work that you guys are having. But at that time, we were in school, bio was not my favorite subject. So I decided if I do STEM, it'll have to be something in maths. And because maths was my favorite, and the computer, we didn't have access to computers, so something in maths. And then engineering, through my uncle, decided to give it a shot at IIT entrance. Yeah.
And how was campus? I have to ask.
So I was, obviously IIT Bombay is a beautiful campus, but I used to be there only Monday to Friday. So I was renowned with my hostel that I would basically be there Monday to Friday. Friday afternoon after lecture, I would carry my bag with my laundry to my castle on Friday, go take a train, go home, and come back on Monday morning for the lecture. So weekend was always at home. I think I must have been, probably in my 4 years, spent maybe one Saturday in IIT.
Wow.
Yeah, I literally every time Friday I would go home, get good food at home, get my clothes washed, and come back fresh on Monday morning. So, but campus was awesome. I participated in sports, did a lot of cricket, table tennis, also participated in other extracurricular activities, was actively involved in even organizing Mood Indigo, etc.
Oh, yeah, I was about to ask Mood Indigo. I wasn't an organizer, but more I was involved in helping, fundraising and stuff like that, getting funding for Mood. Okay. So I was about to ask on the Mood Indigo side and how, and then was there any, TechFest started much later.
It was later.
Yeah, much later. At that time, it was only the cultural fest, so Mood Indigo, but then was there a PAF, Performance Art Festival, was there?
I think I wasn't, I don't think I participated in that. I used to get involved in Mood Indigo. I used to get involved in a lot of sports, and but I spend the weekend at home.
That's a luxury in being here. And so, were you born in Bombay?
No, I was born in Delhi. Okay. My father moved to Bombay when I was 3 years old, and I've been in the same house ever since.
Wow!
So I've been in the same place for 55 years.
And after IIT, then you went for a master's. Again, what was like? It was clear that you were just doing for a master's, or you had PhD in mind, or you said like, now I'm going to be in US.
My kids are much more. There's a lot more advice given to them. They've thought through what they want to do a lot more than in our time. I just everybody was applying. All my colleagues were applying, and I said, okay, let me also apply. And I wasn't sure what I'll do after IIT, honestly. Okay. But I got into a good university, got into Columbia University in New York, and decided to go and do further education and see where it leads me. I had no plans whether I'll do a PhD or whether but I did know when I went that I'll come back in a few years. I did want to I had one thing clear in mind, that I wanted to come back to India. How long, what I would do, but why was that? As I said, for my parents. So I knew that I wanted to be based out of India.
Okay.
And but you had this +2 syndrome, right? Or 2 years mein वापस आ जाएगी. It took me 6 years to come back. The 2 became 6, but I did eventually come back.
So there you mentioned earlier, touched upon meeting BB Jagdeesh and consider him as a mentor. And that's how did you meet him? How did that happen?
So actually, I didn't meet him in the US. He's based in the Silicon Valley, but I actually met him after I came back.
No.
So I was, as I said, I wrote up a business plan in 97, 98, I wrote up a business plan to set up services for businesses, how we could leverage internet for businesses, for mission critical businesses. And Jagdeesh had just started, was just in the process of exiting Exodus Communications. Exodus was the first data center company. So I would not take the credit of being the first to invent data center business. That was actually done by BV Jagdeesh. We were the first in India, but we were not the first in the world. They were amongst the first companies in the world. So it was funny. It was a Thai event. I still remember. I think it was late 97 when, late 98. Late 98 Thai event in Delhi. I still remember it was December and there was, fog. So my flight got delayed by like 8 hours because of fog.
Wow.
But I ended up attending his event, and at the end of the event, I just told him my background and this is what I'm looking to do. And you know what he told me in that 5 minutes that I met him? That look, I have had many people come because of his successful exit at Exodus. Exodus, by the way, went to up to $25 billion valuation, right? When he exited, it was really doing well. And so he was like the poster boy Indian in Silicon Valley, So a lot of Indians had approached him saying, you'd like to set up something similar in India, right? And he said, amongst all the people who set up, you were able to talk credible language. Like I talked about carrier neutrality, which is, having data centers have multiple carriers connect and things like that. So, which he had not come across. And one of the things Jagdeesh wanted to do was he wanted to give back to India. He wanted the digital infrastructure to be set up in India. And it felt that we were the right people to partner with. And he did an angel investment. And once Jagdeesh invested, I had a series of VCs looking to come to invest in us.
You got the business plan, you got the angel investment and started moving, and that was still pre-2000. Okay. And what was the challenges? The earliest at that time, we were just about to start. What were the I won't say just the technological challenges or infrastructure challenges, could have been even other challenges related to, because I think that was very new to India. What were the challenges?
I would say multiple areas, right? Multiple types of challenges. First of all, nobody had built data centers in India other than one or two banks, right? So when you spoke to vendors, when you spoke to partners about data centers, that this is what you want to build, they couldn't believe that you wanted air conditioning round the clock. So many tons of ACs, so much tons of this. So that itself was an educating. You had to educate the market a little bit. From a customer perspective, as you had already touched upon, most customers were not used to outsourcing anything. But the worst challenge that we had was within a year of us starting. I mean, literally we started in October 2000, and within a year, the entire industry collapsed. There was a dot-com bubble that went bust. And a lot of our clients, one of our investors was eVentures, which was SoftBank funded. And eVentures had a whole bunch of dot-com customers. And many of them could, and we weren't giving credit to customers, but because they were funded by a investor, we gave some credit. So we had some bad debts. We had customers not being able to pay up, and ours is a capital intensive business. So nobody wanted to fund data centers. So unfortunately, in Exodus Communications, the US collapsed. Jagdeesh had exited by then, but we fundamentally, so these were the challenges. One is the dot-com bust. Second was the customer adoption. And third was even, how do you build a data center in India when the ecosystem was not aware of what data centers were. But, we stood by it. We fundamentally knew, one of the good things that happened was we realized that within 12 or 13 months of operation, we became cash flow positive.
Wow.
Because fundamentally, the business was very sound, right? Despite all the challenges, the business was a very, very solid business because you're actually, helping clients when you build a data center, when you aggregate the overhead of your electrical, mechanical infrastructure, land, building, etc., is spread over a wider customer. You have a small team of engineers that can manage multiple customer workloads. So the common overhead costs get spread over a much wider base, and that economics you can share with the client. So it becomes, a lot. It's fundamentally a very, very strong business. That is the belief that we had, and so we continued despite all these challenges.
You mentioned dot-com bust. So any other war stories? Any interesting stories from that time?
So I'll tell you. We were down to the last 19 lakhs in the bank in 2000.
Wow.
I still remember. and he's now an investor, so I don't mind sharing with him. Avnish Bajaj and Suvir were founders of Bazi.com.
Yes.
Bazi was looking to co-locate with us. And one of our competition at that time said, oh, these guys don't have money. They're small. They won't survive. So I actually put in money in the bank just so I could, they asked for my bank balance statement. And they said, Niren asked me for the bank. And so I actually put money in the bank so I could show larger stake. Yeah, so there were, we literally, so there was a challenging time. But the other interesting anecdote was, I think we covered that when we talk about cloud, was, whether to do cloud or not. We built these large data centers and I do cloud or not. But I think this was a very interesting thing. We came down to the last 19 lakhs, I still remember. But we managed to turn the corner. Yeah, we had another interesting thing. We have I won't name the company, but somebody was trying to acquire us for 24 crores. Somebody came to acquire us, saying that, we bought the capability, okay, it's difficult access to funding. Why do we acquire you? And, we were, unfortunately, our investor, eVentures, shut their fund. So, and access to capital was difficult at that time because people didn't realize that data centers were fundamentally strong. It was the kind of clients that were in data centers that went away. So data centers at that time, and then 2-3 data centers collapsed because of the wrong kind of clients. So people thought that data centers inherently is bad. And being capital intensive, not having access to capital, one of the players in the market came to us saying, look, we understand you've got technical capability. This is a capital intensive business. Let us acquire you and you build our business for you. They offered us, I think 25 crores for our business. They said, this is the kind of, you've invested a little bit more, but we'll offer you this much. Unfortunately, I said no.
And eventually you sold to entity.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
That is also very interesting. What happened was around 2011, 2012 time, many things happened. One, there was a company called 21 Bayonet that in China went public. There was a company in Brazil that got acquired by Equinix because data centers became hot. There was global expansion required. And all the large companies, whether it was Equinix and there was another, I think Verizon acquired one of the data center companies also that had presence in one of these markets. So suddenly people realized that, the growth is going to be in Brazil, India, China. And so there were a lot of, M&A / public activity that happened. So suddenly in 2012, we started seeing inbound interest in the company. We were preparing to take the company public.
Oh, you were preparing for the idea.
Yeah, we were preparing for the IPO. So I started hiring senior
in India or
in India.
Okay.
In India. Investors that invested in me since 2000, but our Series B happened. Series A happened in the year 2000. Series B happened in the year 2008 because by then, from 2000 to 2006, nobody wanted to touch data centers, as I said. And so we had a lot of inbound interest because of these M&A activities that happen in other parts of the world. The natural market for the world would be India. Brazil is doing well, China is doing well, India is obviously next. So suddenly there was a lot of inbound interest in India. Now, there was no other company at that time. Those, the Airtel, Reliance and Tata, and they are all public companies. You can't acquire them.
Correct.
So suddenly we had a lot of inbound interest. And suddenly we had like 5 different companies approach us. So then we said, okay, look, we're looking to go public. If we can get the same value by getting an acquisition, why not? So we hired a banker, and the banker front-ended these companies, ran a process, and we liked Entity out of this. And the reason we chose Entity was also very interesting. One, we thought the culture was very good, very good fit. So, Japanese and Indian culture actually is very, very synergistic.
Yeah.
Second was that they obviously they wanted entry into India. We wanted to take some of our services global. We had built our cloud. They were interested in our cloud technology. They were interested in our managed services technology that we could offer managed services from India. And so it helped even from that perspective. They also did a lot of transfer of technology to us. For example, how to build data centers in earthquake-prone zones. So, for example, our Noida data center is one of the most unique designs in an earthquake-prone zone. A new Noida data center using earthquake dampers and stuff like that that we built. So there was a lot of good synergy that we saw. And so even though there were a lot of other players that expressed interest in us, we ended up selecting NTT. And the most important thing for me is I didn't want to exit the business. I gave my investors and employees an exit. I kept almost my entire stake in the company and exited only in late 2017. So they allowed me to continue as a partner. So it was a, and the good thing for me was in the VC world, each time I wanted to build a new data center, I would have to raise money and that would require a lot of effort, right? Here, NTT had also brought capital. So every time so we grew really fast. Our trajectory became much, much faster once NTT became a partner, because then I could build data centers at will. When I left NTT in 23, I'm still on the board, but when I left as an employee, we'd built 20 data centers with 4.5 million square foot and, with close to $500 million in revenue.
Wow.
Yeah.
So from one data center to...
Yeah, one 5,000 square foot data center to 4 million square foot plus.
Oh, that's some journey. That's some journey for sure. So on the cloud, so where did you see? So data centers were there, and then you mentioned that 2000 to 2006. Anyway, there was a little bit. 2006-7 was about the time when cloud had started. So how did you see cloud as a fundamental shift on the business side, or how did you look like again from an India perspective itself? Did you see cloud happening?
Great question. So I'll tell you what happened. So Amazon actually invented the cloud business. As you know, they were for their own retail. They done a lot of automation, and then they decided to monetize that automation. They started actually in 2003-4, but customers in India started adopting AWS and those kind of services, as you rightly said, in about 2006-7 timeframe. So we started getting some of our customers saying that we started seeing customers actually. What we had done successfully when we started Netmagic was bring customers who were hosted overseas to India. But then we started seeing customers going out saying that you don't have these services. I can get this done without having to wait for so long. I can, if the elasticity in the cloud appealed to them. And so then we had an internal debate. We said, look, should we, we're building these massive. Now, by then we started building these larger data centers, right? Where the Victoroli data center was about 40,000 square foot. Of course, now we build 300,000 square foot plus. But we started building these large data centers, and we said, look, if we start going with cloud, that's going to shrink the footprint. So how will we sell our space? So we had a debate internally. Should we adopt cloud, or should we just start focus on colo? And we said, look, we should do cloud, because if we don't, we'll get disrupted. And we realized that our strength, especially when you're competing with the big boys, the Reliance and Tatas of the world, is in IP. Right, not so much in capital, and we said we need to maximize revenue per square foot. So we do virtualization. We are going to actually maximize revenue per square foot. So that's how we ended up. We were the first Indian company to launch cloud services in India. Our brand name was Simply Cloud. It's still in operation. NTT is still using it in India and doing pretty well. And we did this. We launched this. Actually, we were lucky that Steve Ballmer and BB Jagdeesh launched this in 2008 or 9 first. And we've been running this cloud offering since then. It was a non-GPU cloud. GPUs came in later, but it is a very large cloud infrastructure from Indian context. Yeah.
So after Netmagic, like the kind of exit that you mentioned, of course, you didn't exit. But again, that's also a question. You give exit to your investors. Why didn't you exit? Or even when you exited, you would have become a VC. So you would have retired back then, or even now.
So actually, when in India, when you create a company, you need to have 2 shareholders. So some of the equity was also in my father's name, and entity only wanted to continue with me and nobody else. So we did exit like 3% or so, which is my father's name. And so we did get some exit. So I didn't have to worry about money even with that exit. But yes, a lot of my friends who were fellow entrepreneurs, once they had exits, they decided to either become angel investors or join VC firms, etc. I couldn't do that. So first I continued at Netmagic entity, and the reason was also, I'd done early stage, I'd done growth stage, but I also wanted to see what it was to build a global company. And I was fortunate that entity made me in charge of the global data center business. So I ran the global data center business with entity, managing $3 billion of investment a year and $2.1 billion of P&L revenue, with a very healthy top bottom line. So you were the third largest data center company. But I saw the trend, and I'll kind of segue into the GPU business in 22 when in late 22 when ChatGPT created waves, right, and early 23, a lot of our Simply Cloud customers, our cloud offering customers, started asking us for AI workloads. They actually started asking. By then, my role had changed from being, I was not looking at the IT side of the business. I was looking at the co-location side of the business. So from being an India head, doing everything from data centers to network to security to cloud to managed service to system integration, my role transitioned in 22, early in June 22, to become the global data center head. When this trend came, I am not running the cloud business anymore. And so I could not influence entity to get in this space. And so then I decided, okay, this is the time to leave and start my business. Initially, we thought we'll focus more on the software layer. So we'll build the orchestration platform, we'll build the MLOps platform, we'll build the observability stack, we'll build the security stack. And then when we saw the opportunity, when we saw that there's a demand-supply mismatch on GPUs, we decided to also get into the infrastructure piece ourselves. And of course, we had to raise money before we could buy GPUs. And so we launched our services only in August 24.
But why to do it again?
Okay, I didn't answer that part of the question. I'm sorry. No, I couldn't stay at home, do nothing. And, it's just too exciting. And, very honestly, I didn't have, I was aware of what AI is and, keeping in touch with some of those trends. But it was so exciting to learn, right? I must have done at least 20 courses of Andrew and team on Coursera and on deeplearning.ai. And it was just so exciting to learn something new. I think that was the reason I couldn't just sit at home and do nothing. And here every day you learn. I learned so much from you. I see, I remember, it was when I came to Pune and saw what you did, right? And when you took me through what you're doing, it was so exciting. And every day there are new things happening in this space. So it's just that exciting that this is the best time to be in this space, right? You can't be sitting at home doing nothing, right? So I just couldn't sit at home, and so I decided to do this.
Yeah. So I was looking at Neysa, and I read about it talks about AI acceleration cloud system. It sounds very buzzy, very futuristic. What does it mean, and what does Neysa actually do?
So this goes to the genesis of when we started, right? So a lot of enterprise clients of ours, even earlier at Netmagic, when they started asking for AI workloads, we found that all enterprises knew that they needed to use AI if they wanted to survive. But they knew that there was enough buzz created that, look, my competitor is doing AI, or this is the trend in the West, and if I don't do it, I'll be obsolete.
Okay.
They had budgets that were done for POCs. Okay, here's a 10 crores, here's 15 crores, you go and do a POC. But then when the CIOs actually started doing stuff, they found it either not working, they found it too complex, they found it too expensive, they found it, oh, I couldn't get the result, I couldn't get any ROI, I couldn't justify the ROI. So it was designed, our cloud platform, we call it Velocis, was designed to address this. And there what we did was, we wanted to make AI affordable. We wanted clients to use it very confidently, have control of their own destiny, use it as often as possible and as easily as possible. And so we looked at multiple layers. So at the infrastructure as a service layer, we had three offerings. One is bare metal offering. Second is a VM offering, virtual machine offering. And third is a managed container offering. And then we also have two platforms. At the platform layer, at the AI PaaS layer, we have a developer platform for MLOps. We built our own orchestration layer to schedule and use GPUs effectively. And we've also got a low-code, no-code platform for for business users to build GenAI apps.
Interesting.
Right? And last but not the least, we also want to accelerate the usage by also providing inference as a service. So people don't actually have to, we downloaded all the popular models and open source models. In fact, talking about open source, our entire stack is open source, is built on open source platform. So clients have a much better control of their own destiny. There's not some proprietary technology that they're kind of locked into, right? So the aim was to accelerate their journey to AI, which is why we started this.
Right. So you touched upon it now already that yes, this is where they were facing the challenge. But what gaps, what more in terms of the gaps that you really see even now in for the whole AI infrastructure market, and that you see that you'll be serving.
So it's not just about GPUs, right? I fundamentally believe that India is going to be larger in inferencing market. So one is you need a very high uptime scalability. You need to be able to scale inferencing, right? In addition to that, um, clients want to have control over their destiny. They don't want to be locked into something that they have to adhere to, right? So they want more flexibility, more control. Talking about flexibility, they want a combination. When you talk to banks and insurance companies, they want the ability to have private clusters, not necessarily only on public cloud. They want hybrid. They want public and private. So, so these are some of the areas where we saw white space. They want, sometimes data can be, in different places. They want to go to ingest large amounts of data, then normalize it, then train it, and then use it. So we found that there was no one-stop shop that addressed all of this. Last but not the least, we also have, so in addition to doing IaaS, AI PaaS and inference as a service, we also have our own MLOps team. What we don't have is domain expertise. So we don't have, let's say, healthcare expertise like Plexus has, or we don't have expertise in any one domain. But what we do have is a basic ML expertise, which can marry infrastructure to use cases and help customers. We handle customers to help them achieve their objective.
So you mentioned hybrid. Where is that something also where Nisa is helping? Like, I thought it's only that you have your data center, is the GPUs and everything is there. But what about your on-prem thing? Is that
No, of course, we do a hybrid where on-prem could be on either customer prem or it could be on customer's private cloud, which is third-party data center. One of the advantages for us is we are co-located in entity data center which has over 3,000 enterprise clients. And so we can do a direct cross connect to any of our enterprise clients and actually give them private clusters like a public cloud, because they don't have to we air gap the solution and give it to them, and they can be in our area but still be connected only to their cloud and nothing else, right? So that is one of the.
but is this something which is also being offered by others, or is this
No, this is something unique. I mean, it technically could be offered. I mean, some of the hyperscalers are doing like Cloud Connect or Express Route or whatever to connect to their clouds. So we are doing the same thing in India. So we offer private cross connects to enterprises so that and so if they want a private cluster, they can do it. If they want a hybrid setup where they want something on public on consumption basis and something on private. So, for example, they may want to do the training on a private cluster, they may want to do the inferencing on one basis or either inference as a service. That flexibility we offer.
so now we have already seen the time from so things being to cloud, and then now it's more AI. But what the term that we are coming across now is that there are the cloud has been there already, that we can actually say that the legacy cloud systems versus now what we call as the AI native cloud system, and that's what, like you said, that Nesa is more an AI native cloud system. What what is different really, and how do you see, like, in how this is going to really help employers in next 5 years?
So even if you look at all the major studies that have been done, right? If you look at McKinsey, the recent study, they said that 70% of all data center workloads will be AI in the next 5 years, right? virtually every enterprise you talk to is looking at some use case or the other, right? Either they're using AI for productivity improvement or also for innovation in rapidly changing product lines, etc. Right? So it's only a matter of time, and so we firmly believe that the adoption in AI is going to be much faster, and the workload will start moving. Now, where's the difference? The difference is it's much more complex to manage, right? So it's non-trivial to manage, and the rate at which technology is changing is just getting drivers to match various GPUs, getting different kinds of storage. The entire storage ecosystem has evolved to be this. You have a lot of unstructured data now, and even the networking is completely different compared to what it used to be. Security constraints. See, not there's not been so much focus on and now there is of course a lot of focus, but the security constraints, security issues in AI is non-trivial. Again, you have to worry about not only that information doesn't leak into a public offering, but also you have to look at how data can be poisoned, how models can be poisoned, etc. All these things are things that we believe are really worry were only about what's going out and it should not go out. Now the worry is also what's coming up in. Yes, absolutely. So it's there are a whole set of news. I think our experience in scaling India's largest indigenous cloud definitely stands us in good stead to address this market, but it's a continuous learning for us and it's non-trivial. Many people think that just get GPU and the problem is solved, and that's just the start of the problem. I think it's a lot more than just GPU. There's an entire software ecosystem, the entire manageability, scalability, security that has to be addressed. And that's why what we're doing in Neysa is also we have a separate team that just looks at AI security. We have a separate team that looks at observability and scalability, just so that we can scale this. Because we believe that once the explosion comes, in inferencing in India, the there won't be time to figure out how to scale. You have to be ready. Foundation has to be strong.
Right. So all of it till now, I also asked really from an enterprise perspective and how real it is. What about startups? Like whatever you are doing at Neysa and how Neysa is supporting. Yes, of course, the big money will always be at enterprises, banks you spoke about, and all of. What about startups?
So we are seeing huge traction in 4 areas. One is, and I'll address startups specifically. We're working with a lot of some of the premier research institutes. We're working with the government. We're working with enterprises like banks and insurance companies. And we're also working with a lot of AI native startups. And there's some amazing work. I don't know if I should call Innoplex as a startup, but you guys you are doing cutting edge work. But you know, uh, even in other areas, right? We've come across some really interesting companies that are doing multimodal AI. They're doing they're doing domain specific AI. They're doing agentic AI, and there's so many different things. And we not only offer them credits, but we also again a lot of times what we find is why startups are brilliant in their application or in developing the AI application or developing the AI use case. They not very often don't understand what it means for the underlying infrastructure. Then OpenAI is not cheap, right? So we want to do scalable innovation. Then they want to look at alternatives, and that's where we want to come in and abstract the infrastructure layer and make it so easy for them to use that it's as good as doing an API over the or using something like an OpenAI. So yeah, so we've seen some phenomenal traction from startups. I believe there are more than 4,000 AI startups in the country, and we've been fortunate to work with a few, maybe about close to 30, 40 startups, and we are very impressed with the talent that we've seen so far.
Interesting. Talking about AI again in terms of AI adoption. So we were just talking about it earlier as well. That still there are people who call AI a hype. What's the biggest misconceptions around AI adoption that you have come across?
So two definite ones. One is, oh, AI is all hype, and second is AI is very expensive, right? So just imagine the power that you're getting, right, with these, GPU infrastructure that you get. You're literally getting a supercomputer at a cost of a server. Okay, the misconception is that they're comparing the normal compute CPU servers with GPU servers, and that's why they think it's expensive. But actually, if you look at the sheer performance, price and performance has come down to maybe 1/20th of what it used to be, right? And so AI is not expensive. Obviously, there's not enough expertise, and you end up wasting money. Then you find AI expensive. So if you can handle clients and make them right size the requirement, a lot of people want to kill ant with an elephant, right? You don't need very, very high-end GPUs for everything. Some things you can do with even CPUs, right? So if you right-size the infrastructure, you can remove some of these myths. The other thing is about, oh, I don't know, it's all hype. AI is not accurate. It's never going to solve my problems and stuff. And I think I've heard multiple people saying, I'm not saying this for the first time, that companies that don't adopt AI will get disrupted very soon. Right? It's only a matter of time. So I think these are the two hype. One of the challenges in the enterprise space we've also noticed is, while everybody's doing something or the other with AI, if nothing else, they're using it for Copilot or they're using OpenAI in the organization. Um, a lot of the use cases are still in POC. I think almost 70-80% of use cases are still, we have not yet reached production. I believe this next 12 to 18 months is where you start seeing production use of AI in enterprise at scale.
In terms of, again, looking at GPUs and all of the geopolitical map, how things are changing literally every day, the policies, everything. What do you see, like, where, talking about where does India, fit in? Do you see any India getting impacted negatively for any of it that is happening, especially now that with Neysa, we're bringing access to GPUs here. Do you see any challenges going forward?
So we're we're cautiously optimistic, but obviously the 1 week before the Biden administration left, they introduced this AI diffusion policy. While it was predominantly meant to prevent access to GPU technology to countries like China and Russia and Syria and a couple of other, Cuba and I think one more, um, they put so that they've classified countries into 3 tiers: tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. Tier 1, there's no restriction. Tier 3, there's complete restriction. And tier 2 is the mid tier, which is 150 countries. Unfortunately, India falls in one of them, in tier 2, as one of the 150 countries. And where there is a GPU cap imposed, right? And of course, there are some, you can be a validated end user, and if you become or you have a universal validated end user where, let's say a hyperscaler wants to come to India, as long as they can bring up to 7% of their global chips into India without any restriction. The many of the national validated end user where the company and the country can get validated. If you disclose who our customers are, then you can overcome this to some extent. But still, the cap could adversely impact India. I'm pretty sure that the Indian government, as part of the overall trade negotiations, is definitely taking this up. Obviously, Nvidia has gone, companies like Nvidia, AMD have gone to the government, and so have providers like us, and they've assured us that they're working with the US government. And I'm pretty confident that in the near future, there'll be a solution to this. But yes, if this law comes into effect on, I think, mid-May, and if it turns out that there is that GPU cap stays, then it could restrict the number of GPUs in the country. And if I think India is on the inflection point, then it could be an impact. Right now, I don't think there may be any immediate impact, but there will be in the near term if it's not lifted. So I'm pretty confident that Indian government will work with the US counterpart, and I believe Trump say, I know these his friends, so I'm hoping that friendship will and better sense will prevail.
But do you see this also? Should we look it as an opportunity, like what DeepSeek did? Because of the restrictions, they were actually had to go to levels detail under the hood, and they had to optimize things which appeal up to nation. That is something. So do you think that if we have constraints, would that open up a window for such a kind of an opportunity of innovation? What do you see?
No, I agree with you that whenever there's adversity, whenever there are constraints, people figure out a way, and that spurs innovation. And I think India is known for Jugaad, right? So I think it gives an opportunity, but I would still prefer I think the cap is a little harsh. I think 50,000 GPUs over a couple of years is a little too harsh, and I'm hoping that good sense prevails. It definitely will spur innovation. It will definitely, people will do more and less. For example, Nvidia GPU support MIG, which allows for fractional GPUs. We've already started offering fractional H100s, and I think more and more people will start using those kind of GPUs. And a lot more you can, today, honestly, today there is wastage. If you look at the GPU utilization of most cloud providers, there is a fair amount of wastage. I think the utilization will improve because people will start trying to extract more, uh, you know, bang for the buck, if you will. And so there will be innovation. But having said that, I still feel, I still wish that this cap goes away.
Another thing linked to it. Do you see or do you think India producing its own Nvidia somewhere in future?
So do we have the potential? Absolutely, because some of the top brains in not only Nvidia but also some of the top semiconductor companies and chip design companies in the US are Indians. The CEO of Cadence is Indian. So many other companies are Indian. Um, uh, and also now the government, I think, especially now with the policies that the government has done for semiconductors, with Tata setting up a plant and they're encouraging other companies to do, we definitely have the potentials. And obviously, Nvidia has reached a stage where 4 nanometer technology is non-trivial, and there's only even for Nvidia, it's only TSMC that's doing it. So that may take some time. But I think as a semiconductor, I think we'll start seeing a lot more companies and a lot more chips being designed and made in India in the next decade. Only time will tell whether we can reach, can build an Nvidia out of India, but we certainly have the potential.
You have all this span of decades. You have seen three major tech waves, right? Starting from the telecom connectivity, the broadband phase, the cloud, and now AI. What do you think next lies next beyond this?
I think the next technology shift will be, in my opinion, will be quantum computing, and I think that will, you know, obviously AI will benefit even more with quantum computing. While it's still a few years away for being production grade, but already there's been significant advances in this space. One of the fallouts of that is also going to be your security algorithms, right? So, for example, RSA will not stand. So, you need to have quantum safe algorithms. So, yeah, so that's one of the things that I think will dominate the next decade.
When what are you doing? What
Your guilty pleasure when you are not building Neysa, being busy with everything else on tech. What do you do?
So, I like, last 3 years, thanks to one of my mentors, Dr. Hitin Sheth, I've been doing a lot of physical fitness. Do I do I play the tabla on weekends.
Oh,
Wow. Also like reading a lot. Earlier it used to be more fun reading. Now it's more just keeping up with the AI, right? There's so much happening every day that if you don't read, that will become obsolete very soon. So, a lot of reading, and of course, spending time with family.
so you mentioned fitness to work out.
Yeah, so I do almost 2 hours a day of fitness every day. 2 hours, yeah, and about 1 hour on weekend, but 2 hours Monday to Friday. So 7 to 8 in the morning, and then 1 hour walk in the evening. 7 to 8, I do a combination of stretching, weights, wow, cardio, etc.
No wonder you are fit. Yes, that's very much visible. So you mentioned books. So what's the? I should ask this first. What's the book that we're reading now? You can share.
You know, you're gonna laugh, but it's a Robin Cook thriller. So I love reading medical thrillers. Again, Robin Cook is one of my favorite authors. And so I just saw, I was going on a flight, and when I would go to the airport, I browsed the bookstore, and I saw that his latest thriller, Bellevue, is out. So I just started reading that.
But what's that book that had an impact on you, or that that changed the way we think?
I think it was more the ecosystem around me and mentors like BB Jagdeesh and others that some professors at IIT that had a more profound impact. My parents had more profound impact than a specific book. I think The Magic of Thinking Big is one of the books that I had an impact. So that you could think really big when you want to compete, especially in a capital intensive business, when you're competing with the big players. Um, that is one book that I think made a big impact. I think there were a couple of others, but I think this was the one that had the most impact.
What would be the funniest thing that you would have heard or come across about data center or AI or cloud? Anything by anybody in the industry?
Think I don't remember on I think there was something funny. I don't recall exactly, but there was, I think, some government official, was it a minister or was it some government official who thought cloud computing was actually about clouds and rain and
Wow, really?
the they didn't know that the cloud computing meant what cloud computing was all about, and they actually thought it meant about cloud. It was actually I think we Google it, we find that.
Wow. Okay, we'll play a rapid fire. Sure. Yeah. So just I'll ask. I'll give you two options. Just choose one.
Okay.
Okay. And fast.
Yeah.
Code or no code?
Code.
Build or bar?
Build.
Elon Musk or Satya Nadella?
Satya Nadella.
Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Favorite tech city? Bangalore, Pune, Hyderabad.
Mumbai.
We didn't have that in option. Okay. Now moving on to uh, the senior side of things. So you have been a mentor, and I've come across people who have spoken about you as a mentor, and of course you have been investing. We have been interacting with so many startups and founders. But now, if you had to advise someone, and maybe found aspiring founder or anything, and one advice which you think that somebody would have given you that advice in your 20s, what would be that?
So when it comes to startup founders, few things that I would tell them, right? I don't think it's only one piece of advice, but there are multiple things that I'll quickly tell you. One of course is there's no shortcut to hard work, right? And you have to be in the long run. You have to look at building something built to last, right? You build a company not just to necessarily flip it, but actually to build a viable business. I think you need to validate the that the customer. Sometimes founders get impressed with the idea that they have, and they don't really see the product market fit, or don't see whether there's a need for that innovation or idea. And I think we need to obviously validate that. I think also build a great team, because what I do is all the people that are there who work with me are all smarter than me, right? You don't want yes men. You don't want people who just say yes to you. You want people who are smarter than you, whether it's your CTO, whether it's your chief marketing officer, chief sales officer, chief business officer, chief financial officer. All my team is all smarter than me, right? So um, I think empathy towards all your stakeholders. Obviously, ethics and transparency is very important, but even empathy towards all your stakeholders, whether your clients, whether they are your investors, or whether they are employees. So these are some of the. And of course, you have to constantly learn. Yeah. So I think, and I was lucky that my mentors gave me this advice. So, whenever I meet founders, So between my exit of Netmagic and starting Neysa, I was running. I was an employee of entity for a few years. That's when I did most of my angel investing, and I had fortunate to come across some of the brightest founders in the industry. And these are some of the tips that I shared with them. I learned a lot. I think I learned more from them than I imparted to them, but these were some of the tips that I shared.
So what do you look for in founders when you are wearing the investor hat?
So when I was doing the investing, I look at the passion, I look at the team. That's the first thing, right? And I go by faith. I go by trust. I'm not a classic investor. For me, that is more important than, and of course, they have to have something credible. It can't be just a good founder, but with something that doesn't even make sense. But the most important thing for me is the passion, the fire in the belly, and the commitment of the founders.
Now that you are leading another startup, how do you stay ahead of the curve? What do you do?
Especially in our field, it is very, very important to stay abreast and stay ahead of the technology. So whether it's attending conferences, whether it's constant reading, whether it's experimenting, with technology, I always encourage the team to play with things. When we bought our first set of GPUs, a lot of them was used by my own team to build transformers, right? Because we, unless we know what the pain points of customers are, we'll never be able to solve them. And and in AI, there's like a new model getting released every other day, right? And so, I noticed that you just launched OntoSite on Rama 4, right? And that's amazing. I mean, similarly, we've been downloading all the latest models and offering it in our model repository, and just reading a lot of research papers. So that's something that we have to constantly do to stay abreast. Otherwise, we'll miss some important trend. And of course, one of the important things is also we constantly we go a lot to the Bay Area, because not only our investors are there, but when you talk to people there, some of the latest trends you get a first-hand feel for that. Right? So these are the ways we keep in touch.
Since you mentioned Bay Area, I like something which I'm still bit puzzled or wondering about that. Like this year at GTC, and there were 28,000 people, that came, and we were there for like whole week. In fact, more. We were there initially for like 12 days, but then the whole week of GTC, we were there. And I asked actually like, how many people have come from India? It shocked me. It's like just about 300, or 350. 28,000, 350 from India. And that is what I said, like, do you see it's like, one, maybe, do you see that there is no, since you mentioned conferences, that do you see there is no value in like being like startup founder and really going there? Do you see that probably people think that they will not learn anything there? Or why do you think that people are not really inclined to be there? For me, GTC has always been a great learning experience.
No, absolutely. And last year also we had 5 people from Neysa go, and this year also we had 4 people from Neysa go. In my case, I had to present at a conference, investor conference, like 2 weeks before GTC, and I couldn't take so much time off. So I'll probably go next year. But there, I absolutely agree. The kind of learning that you get, I think learning plus networking. When you learn, not only do you learn stuff in the conference, you learn. There's a lot of research that gets shared, but also when you talk to people in these conferences under one roof, you have virtually, in our case, you have, chip manufacturers, you've got, server vendors, you've got network vendors, you've got storage vendors, security, you've got the latest, companies that are providing GPU cloud services, which you can learn from each other. So it's absolutely one of the best places to go. So last year it was our CTO and a team of people, and this year business development plus technology team plus our chief product officer. So we had 4 people go.
But see, you mentioned there are 4,000 AI startups.
Yeah.
But why are these guys not doing that? Or is it the affordability question that, it's very expensive to get there? Or?
One should also look at, GTC is also available online, at least the conference portion. The networking portion you can't do.
Right.
but the conference portion is available online. So I think there are several people also, attended remotely. I'm not sure if those are included in the 350 that you said. I think the value that the conference offers is much more than any kind of affordability issues. So I hope more people attend next year.
Again, maybe I'm going on a. But in general, when you are talking to startups now, do you still, since you mentioned about enterprises that they realize probably that AI is there and the investments are there, but from a startup perspective, do you see that there is a general understanding among the founders or the startup teams that yes, AI was an area where you should be investing, or even compute or as an area that you should be investing, or do you still see that there is something which there is still a lack of broader understanding?
In fact, I think the startups are even more nimbler than some of the brick and mortar enterprises. I think the enterprises also have a lot of legacy systems which they have to kind of figure out, legacy mindsets and legacy systems that they have to kind of overcome. But I think the startups are much more nimbler, and they realize that even from a fundraising perspective, their investors are going to ask them, can you get disrupted? And if you're not using AI or are not at least have thought through how you would leverage AI, you may not be around. So I think the across the board, startups are adopting AI, I think, even faster than some of the traditional enterprises.
But still, we don't see, and this is a question which has been coming. Probably this will be 2-3 questions. First would be, we still don't see a DeepSeek coming out of India. I heard this question from a lot of people. What do you see? What's the reason?
I think there's several people working on foundational models, including you guys. Plexus, there's there's work happening in some of the IITs. There's work happening with companies like Sarvam. So I think you'll see some breakthroughs soon.
So we are going to see it.
We're going to see some breakthroughs in this space soon. It may not necessarily be in building a new foundation. It may be in a vertical space. The attention is all you need. The first author was an Indian, right? And there were 2 Indians on that paper, right? So I think again we have the potential. I think as the ecosystem matures, you'll start seeing these kind of breakthroughs from India. But I agree that the gap right now is pretty large. Right? US and China are far ahead of us.
Yeah.
But do we have the potential? Absolutely. Do we have? I think the ecosystem is maturing, and very soon you'll start seeing some great innovation from India.
So you see that whatever the government is doing on the India AI mission, especially recently there was a proposal for building foundation model. Do you think these steps are, I'll say they are good, of course, but do you see this is enough, or there is a lot more that needs to be done?
I think it's a great question. I think it's definitely a good intent and a step in the right direction. Is it enough? Absolutely not. Right? There has to be a lot more done than just. So this is AI mission, at least what has been announced so far, is more to make AI affordable to researchers and to innovators, so that GPU cost doesn't become a hindrance, and they can not only give some grants but also give access to affordable infrastructure. But this is not, I think I firmly believe India is a large inference market. And I think inferencing is where we need to do a lot more. Now, whether the government should be doing it or the private sector should be doing it is a different question. So this is definitely a step in the right direction. But we have a lot. As I said, we are already way behind, and we need to catch up much faster. And I think it behooves the private sector to also invest and take a little bit of risk in this space.
So talking about more trends and tech trends. So what's one tech trend that everybody is hyping about that you think is overrated?
Metaverse. I think is one area which I never could identify with, didn't understand it. How could people build virtual malls and virtual cities and enjoy that, and that whole thing. While I think blockchain as an underlying technology is good, and I never got into bitcoins, and I never got into the entire metaverse piece. I think the fundamental technologies of AR, VR, and blockchain are there to stay. But I think this entire version of metaverse was, I think, hype and something I could not identify.
To meta.
Yeah.
When I think of AI, we have found our own thesis that there are three things that you need: people, data, and compute. The PDC, and in that, you of course already touched upon that. Yes, you should build great teams. So that like the people part, compute is something which you are extremely focused on. What about data? Where do you see what's happening in data, especially in the Indian context? Do you see we are as an ecosystem, we are well equipped, we are there yet, not there yet? Because without data, you can't build AI. What's your view on that?
No, absolutely. I think that's one of the challenges, even when you're looking at the Indic languages models that people are building. One of the challenges they're facing is access to clean data. There's garbage in, garbage out. So you're doing supervised learning. If you have wrong, garbage inputs, you'll get garbage outputs. So getting access to quality data, is a challenge. I think the government has recognized it. I think various institutes have recognized it. Of course, there's a lot of synthetic data generation that's happening. But I think it's it is the fundamental, and it is the biggest challenge even when it comes to enterprises. So forget about from a national perspective. Of course, the Indian languages data. Getting enough data is a challenge, clean data. But even in enterprises, data is all over the place. There's no common data lake. And that is one of the biggest challenges, because when people want to adopt AI and they want it to tune to their context, they find that they don't have clean data that's available. And of course, that trend is now changing. People have realized the importance of data, both at the national level as well as at the enterprise level. And hopefully we'll see this challenge become less of an issue going forward, and having a lot more data. But clearly, data is key to the success of AI.
And again, going back to the team part, you said, yes, build a great team. You have built great teams all your life. What is it? What do you look for when you are hiring?
So, most important thing is, should be a fit in the culture and have similar values of hard work, ethics, and transparency. Second is passion. I want people to be enjoying coming to work every day and not think that it's a cumbersome experience. So it should be passionate. And of course, then the skills. But I think the culture, passion, values is, to me, more important. So sometimes you come across some really brilliant people, but who are very arrogant and cocky. I'll probably not go with them, because they could mess up the culture in your team. For me, it is these things. It is the culture, values, and passion.
That was, I had a follow-up question on that. Since you said culture, passion, skill. But if you had to look for, again, skills versus passion.
Ideally, both. You need skills. You can't hire people without skills. But at the same time, you need somebody who's got fire in the belly and who's willing to. So if I had assuming the skills were the same, obviously I'd go with a personal passion. I think it would be challenging to decide. Obviously, there could be a person who has more skills but is very lazy, and a person who has maybe a little less skills but a lot of passion to learn. I'd rather go with the person who has a little less skills with passion to learn, who we can, we can bring up to speed, than with somebody who's got a lot of skill but is very lazy or doesn't have the passion.
Okay, in all of these, I think we have spoken about a lot of great things, positives. We have done fantastic. But was there ever a low point, and where you really? So you mentioned about the instance where you had like 19 lakhs in the bank. I'll still say that was still fine. But do you see, was that really the rock bottom, or was there anything else where you felt that why did I do it even?
I don't think I ever felt why did I do it, because I've always enjoyed the journey. And I think I think that was probably from a financial perspective. I don't think we'll ever lost faith, but that was from a financial perspective, probably the lowest we've ever come. But I don't think I ever came across a point where I said, why did I do it? But I think the journey is more fulfilling than the actual result. Yeah, no, I don't think I've ever experienced such a low that I said, why did I do it? Yes, you have ups and downs in any enterprise, in any startup. You will have ups and downs. There'll be days where you feel euphoric because you launch a new product or won a large deal. And there are days where you feel disappointed that you've not won something or you've missed a deadline. But nothing that has I've not really come across. Of course, there have been some regulatory challenges that have come our way sometimes in the past, and I hope there are no regulatory challenges when it comes to AI. That there's no law that is passed that restricts we already have the diffusion policy from the US. I hope there's nothing that the Indian government does. So far, they've been very positive. So those kind of challenges keep coming, but nothing that has reached a stage where I feel that why did I do this? I think it's the journey that's important.
And any regrets in life?
No, if I had to live the life again, yeah. Hindsight is always 20/20. You would have, there were some products in Netmagic that didn't take off, that we had to, shut down some initiatives. So if hindsight is 20/20, I would have not done those, but no regrets because
that's an interesting point. So, but is there anything where you pull the plug sooner and then later on you realized, oh, maybe we should have given more time? Is there anything in that journey?
I think it was the other way around. I think there were certain things we should have pulled the plug faster. Where we kept hoping that something will happen and then finally realized, okay, this is not going anywhere. I don't think there was anything where we felt that I wish I'd, for example, convinced entity to adopt, to do this GPU thing faster.
Course, yeah.
So then we would have been 1 year ahead of the game. I would have been 1 year ahead of where I am today. But there was nothing that, sometimes it's just tough to cut losses, right? The entrepreneur wants everything to succeed. And sometimes you just have to take the tough call of saying, okay, this is not working, let's move on. You still learn from it. So I would not regret that because I learned a lot from mistakes that we've made. But obviously you don't want to make the same mistakes twice.
So what's next? What's your goal now?
Right now, from a professional perspective, is to build Neysa. I want Neysa to become, over the next decade, a platform, a cloud acceleration platform that powers governments, enterprise, builds national critical infrastructure, powers AI innovation for governments, enterprises, startups, researchers, becomes synonymous with anything you want to do with AI. You look at the go-to partner for AI. From a personal perspective, I also want to give back. So whether it's in the form of mentorship, whether it's in the form of causes that are close to my heart, my kids, actually, my daughter wants to impact education. My son wants to impact healthcare. My wife wants to spread happiness and in her venture, and so I think those are much more nobler causes. And so I'm hoping that I can also, after Neysa, do something in that space.
What do you want to be remembered for, or as a technologist, as an entrepreneur, as a person?
As a person.
And what that person would be? What should people remember you, as a person for?
I don't want to praise myself, but hoping that people remember me as a good person who's done more good than harm, and that has made an impact in their life.
I've exhausted all my list of questions. I'm just checking if there's anything which I missed. Okay, I think I have covered everything. Is there anything that you want to add before we close?
Well, I think you've done a pretty exhaustive job of not only covered how I got into technology, to entrepreneurship, to mentorship, to AI, to trends, to Neysa. I think we've pretty much done a very, very comprehensive and exhaustive job of doing this.
Okay, great. Then we can close. Thanks a lot, Sharad. It was fantastic having you. Thanks again for hosting us. Always good to be back at Neysa. And
Good to be back in Mumbai. It reminds you of IIT Bombay days.
definitely. And really, this has been personally a thing I've been looking forward to because I get to learn a lot, especially I never imagined, I'll get to speak to the person who got everything started, the entire data center story in India, somebody who started, and I'll get to listen it from you, one-on-one. So that's great.
It is my pleasure because I get to learn from you. You're building foundational models. You've built so many patents in this space. A lot of people think what we've done is more, stuff that's already tried and tested. You're exploring new frontiers. So it's always inspiring to meet founders like you and learning from you.
I get to stand on the shoulders of the giants. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
होप ये पॉडकास्ट आपको पसंद आया होगा. अगर हाँ तो लाइक करें, शेयर करें अपने मित्रों के साथ, और प्लीज़ डोंट फॉरगेट टू सब्सक्राइब आवर चैनल. एंड यस, डोंट फॉरगेट टू प्रेस द बेल आइकन ताकि आपको नोटिफिकेशंस मिलते रहें हमारे हर नए एपिसोड्स के बारे में. एंड मिलते हैं एक नए एपिसोड में हमारे नए गेस्ट के साथ. टिल देन, थैंक यू.